Welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Today we look at lesson 5 of the Bible study and explore the gift of the woman who was poor. She put her copper coins in the temple treasury one day, and Jesus lifted up her generosity. She didn't give a lot of money, but she gave out of her limited resources all she had to live on. You know, so many people on the planet know the woman who was poor, but we don't know her name. We don't know enough about this woman to know whether she experienced joy. I imagine this woman, though, saying, "It's true that I don't have much. Honestly, it's jarring to experience the death of a spouse and go from having what you need to deciding what needs will be met. When I was growing up, I went to temple and gave an offering because that's what I learned to do. I still go to worship and give an offering when I can. I'm so grateful to God for God's blessings, so I give joyfully. Sometimes I only have a coin or two to contribute. I know it's not much, but at times it's all I have. I see the way people look at me. It's not a good experience to be a poor giver, even if it's beyond my control. So many others give much more than I do. It's hard being identified by what I do not have. But it's pure joy to be able to give what I have for the good of the world. We don't want to identify this woman by what she doesn't have. Some of us know what it feels like to be identified by what we do not have or who we are not. Do you think she thought she was doing anything exceptional when she put her 2 copper coins into the church treasury that day? Well, maybe not. But Jesus believed it to be extraordinary. If we were reading this story for the first time, we may be surprised that Jesus pointed her out and praised her for her generosity. Remember those coin banks given to children during Lent, Pentecost, and Christmas? Children and some adults filled the bank up with coins and gave them at offering time. The pastor and members thought it was great, but the treasurer and others who counted Monday after church had to spend extra time counting all those pennies, nickels, and dimes. Jesus could have praised a really big giver in the temple, but he lifted up this woman and her coins. She presumably did not give out of extra income or savings, but with nothing to spare, gave everything. I want to talk a little bit about women's giving in the church. I imagine that the woman who was poor grew up going to the temple and that she contributed to the offering because that's what she learned to do as a woman of faith. Like many women we know in the church, she gave because giving is important. And I would like to believe that it was part of who she was and part of how she lived. Women's giving in the church is also part of our identity in Christ. In our giving, we find joy. Now, it sometimes seems that the more we give, the greater the gifts to us. In other words, it's nearly impossible to give it all away because we receive so much in return. I think if someone were to ask, how do I find joy in Christ? My answer might be give. Give of yourself, give of your possessions, give of your time, be part of a faith community, be part of something bigger than yourself. Let's think about this for a moment. What if this woman knew that in her giving, that she was not really depleting her resources, but prioritizing her gratitude to God above all else? What if the lesson Jesus was teaching was about prioritizing our gratitude to God? She may have been more in touch with her purpose than many of us. In the Reformed tradition, we're taught that our chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy God forever. I pause because I know some of you all know this by heart. I imagine that this woman loved God so much and was grateful for so much that she had to give back. I think we've all had that experience. But sometimes, let's face it, we find it hard to know when to give, how much to give, and where to give. Some of us remember what it was like when we didn't have much money. Some of us are in that place right now. We're struggling with having enough money to pay our bills. Those who retire often have less money than when they were actively working. But complaints about being on a fixed income don't begin to compare with people who have no resources or income at all. Many of us will never understand what it's like for those who are poor to exist in a society where you need money to live. In some cities, you can't even leave home without money in your pocket because the culture depends upon tipping for services. And even at home, in some places, you can't answer the door without having to tip or have someone come by looking to collect the money you owe them. What is more stressful than not having the money you need to live? Even today, generally women's incomes do not equal men's incomes, even if they perform the same work and are in the same positions. And a lot of the work that women do, especially in the home and with children and providing care for other family members, particularly during the global health crisis, is unpaid work. We have all had times where we felt that we barely have enough for ourselves, and so we couldn't give. I hope, though, that we've also had times when we felt we don't have enough for ourselves, and even so, we chose to give. In my experience, people have given to me out of their limited resources. There are more of these people than you might think. Maybe it's part of who they are. Maybe it's part of their identity in Christ. Maybe it's part of their raison d'etre, their reason for existing, their chief end, to glorify God and enjoy God forever. You may be confused as to why we're considering that the woman who was poor might have been a joyous giver in some terrible circumstances. We know that she had a spouse and that her spouse died. We know that she didn't have much. It also makes no sense to many of us when we hear of people whose loved ones have been harmed, and they choose to forgive the person responsible, find joy in life, and give thanks to God, even though they will never be the same again. This forgiveness, or decision to be joyful for some people, is a way to avoid being consumed by grief and anger, provide release and healing, and move forward with one's life. How do you find joy in the midst of tribulation? One of the best ways to live joyfully is to focus on gratitude and be thankful for everything God has done for you. Benedictine brother David Steindl-Rast said, "It is not joy that makes us grateful, it is gratitude that makes us joyful." I think of grace and gratitude when I think of the woman who was poor. We don't know if this woman had gratitude and joy in her heart. What we do know is that she was very generous according to her means. Jesus said, "This poor widow has put in more than all of them." We don't know how this woman felt when she contributed to the treasury. That's not in the passage. But what is amazing to me is that thousands of years later, we still remember her. Truly, I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the treasury. For all of them have contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on. Thank you for being here as we lift up the gift of the woman who was poor. By her witness, we know that it's possible to give of ourselves to others, even during difficult times, and live in faith, hope, and yes, joy.